Hi, so I'm going to be explaining number 3. First, you have your equation. We have h of x, and then you start with your possible rational roots, and then you have your plus and minus, and the numbers that go on the top come from your constant. So you have 1, 2, 4, and 8. Those are the factors of 8. And then on the bottom, you have your factors of your leading coefficient. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. So once you have your ratios, then you put it into one list. So you have your plus and minus. You have your 1, 2, 4, and 8. And then you have your 1 half. You have your 2 over 2 is 1, and then 4 over 2 is 2, and 8 over 2 is 4. So then you go to your 1/3, and then you have your 2 over 3, and then you have your 4 over 3, and then your 8 over 3. Then I'm going to bring it down to 1 over 4, and then 2 over 4 is 1 half, which we already have. 4 over 4 is 1, and 8 over 4 is 2, which we already have those numbers. And then you have your 1/6, and then your 2 over 6, which is 1/3, which we already have, your 4 over 6, which is 2/3, and then your 8 over 6, which we already have that too. And then after that, you have your 1 over 12, and that will be our last one because we have all the other numbers. So after that, you have all your numbers to choose for so that you can synthetically divide. So the first number that I chose to divide with is 1. So we can try that one first. So I put my 1 in the box. I write all my numbers. So I have 12, 53, 66, 12 again, and then -8. So I drop my 12 and I draw my line. So 12 times 1 is 12. 12 plus 53 is 65. 65 times 1 is 65. 65 plus 66 is 131. Times 1 again is 131. Add it to 12 is 143, which you can tell that these numbers are getting really big, so this will not end up working out. So you have 143 minus 8, which is 135, which does not work out. So we know that that number doesn't work or synthetically divide. So after trying more numbers, I decided to try -2. And then I'd write my numbers, 12, 53, 66, 12 again, -8. Drop the 12 and draw your line. So 12 times a -2 is a -24. 53 minus 24 is 29. 29 times a -2 is -58. 66 minus 58 is 8. 8 times the -2 is -16. 12 minus 16 is -4, and as you can tell, the -4 and the -2 make a +8, which gives us 0. So that works out. So now that we know that -2, 0 is one of our points. So after we find one that equals to 0, and then we can take these numbers and write our new equation. So this is 12x, and since this one was to the 4th, this one now is to the 3rd, plus 29x to the 2nd, plus 8x, and then you have your -4. So once we have that new equation, we realize that you can't group because it doesn't factor, or you can't factor because it's not a quadratic, so we cannot use the quadratic equation. So we have to find our possible rational roots again. So you have your PRR, your plus and minus, and then on the top, it's from your constant, which is -4 now. And so now you only have 1, 2, and 4 factors, plus and minus. And then on the bottom, it's your factors of your leading coefficient, which is 12 again. So you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. After that, then we have to make one single list, and you end up with 1, 2, 4, and then you have your 1 half, you have your 1/3, you have your 2 over 3, you have your 4 over 3, you have your 1/4, 1 over 6, and then 1 over 12. After you have your list, you can choose which ones you want to synthetically divide with. The first number I chose was -1 because we know that the +1 did not work in the big equation, so there's no way it would work in the smaller equation. So I decided to try a -1. So you write your numbers, your new numbers, 12, 29, your positive 8, and then your negative 4. You drop your 12, draw your line. So 12 times a negative 1 is a negative 12. 29 minus 12 is 17. 17 times a negative 1 is negative 17. 8 minus 17 is a negative 9, and negative 9 times negative 1 is a positive 9, which equals to 5, which does not give us 0, which means it does not synthetically divide evenly. So the second number that I decided to try was a negative 2. So I write my numbers: 12, 29, 8, negative 4. I drop my 12, draw my line. 12 times a negative 2 is a negative 24. And 29 minus 24 is 5. 5 times a negative 2 is a negative 10. Negative 8 minus 10 is negative 2. And then you can see a negative 2 times a negative 2 is a positive 4, which gives us 0, which shows that it works and it synthetically divides evenly. So now we know that negative 2, 0 is another root, which makes it a multiplicity of 2, so that means it touches and goes when we draw our graph. So now that we have this equation, our new one is 12x, and since this one was to the third, we do this one to the second, plus 5x minus 2. Then we can see that this one will factor. So we can do the AC method. 12 times a negative 2 is a negative 24. Our factors of 24 to make a positive 5 are negative 1 and 24, negative 2 and 12, and then we have a negative 3 and 8, which that one works because that makes a positive 5. And so now we can rewrite it: 12x squared minus 3x plus 8x to break apart this 5, and then minus 2. Now we can factor by grouping. So our first group, we can pull out a 3x. That leaves us with a 4x minus 1. Make sure to still represent this number, even though it got pulled out. And then with the 8x minus 2, we can pull out a 2, which leaves us here with 4x minus 1. After that, we're going to new paper. Then you take your 3x plus 2 from right here, and then you take your 4x minus 1 from right here, because those are the same. So you set your 3x plus 2 equal to 0, and then you minus your 2 on both sides. After that, you have 3x equals negative 2, and then you divide by 3, and then x equals negative 2 over 3. So that is one of our x-intercepts. And then for 4x minus 1, set that equal to 0, add 1 on both sides, then you have 4x equals 1. Divide by 4, and now you have x equals 1 over 4. So negative 2 over 3 is roughly negative 0.6 repeated, and then x, that'll help when we graph, and then 1 over 4 is 0.25, which will also help when we graph and start plotting our points. After that, we have to learn the behavior of our graph. So through our equation, which is right here, we see that our leading coefficient is 12. So 12 is larger than 1, which means that it rises to the right. And our DOP is a 4, which is positive, which means it mimics what the right does, so it rises to the left. After that, we know that there's 4 roots, which we have found. We have our 1, 2, and then this one is multiplicity of 2. So we have 4 roots, and then it has 3 turns expected. After that, we can find out our y-intercept, which is putting 0 for x, so 12 times 0 to the 4th, plus 53 times 0 to the 3rd, plus 66 times 0 to the 2nd, plus 12 times 0 minus 8. So after all of that, we see that the zeros cancel out everything except for your negative 8. So you end up with 0, negative 8 as your y-intercept. And that's a multiplicity of 1, so it just crosses right through that. After that, we can write out our x-intercepts just to help us out. We have our negative 2, 0. This is with multiplicity of 2, so this means it touches and turns. T-U-R-N-S-E. Yeah. And then you have your negative 2 over 3, which just crosses. And then you have, because it has a multiplicity of 1, and then you have your 1/4, which also crosses. And remember, this is negative 0.6, and this is your 0.25. So when we go to graph, I have another page first to graph on. When we go to graph, we have all of our graphing information right here, and then we draw our graph. Oops. And then we have 1, 2, 3. Then we have negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. And then I did this 2, 4, 6. And then I did this negative 2, negative 4, negative 6. And this would be negative 8. So it should actually be a little bit longer, but that's okay. So we want to graph our x-intercepts first. So we have a negative 2, and remember this touches and turns because it has a multiplicity of 2. And then we have our negative 2/3, which is a little bit more than 0.5, so it's going to be right about here. And then we have our 0.25, which is a little bit less than our 0.5, so right about there. We remember that this side rises, and so does this side. And then we have our y-intercept of 0, negative 8. So right here, we'll just kind of fix that. Okay, so we know that our line touches and goes with negative 2. So we'll start like this. It's going to touch negative 2 and go up. It crosses our negative 2 over 3. It goes down. It crosses our y-intercept of 0, negative 8. And then it goes up and it goes through. Oops, that's not very good. It goes through our 1/4 and all the way up. Draw your arrows. Label it h of x. And then our y-intercept, which is 0, negative 8. This one is 1/4, 0. And then we have our, this one's kind of hard, our negative 2/3, 0, which is right there. And then our negative 2, 0 with multiplicity of 2. So we have 1, 2, 3 expected turns, as we should. And then we have our 4 roots. And that should be it. There's your graph.